You're listening to the Voice for Business podcast, episode 49. In today's episode, I'm revealing 3 easy ways to enhance your voice to create more impact with your audience. That's coming up next. Ready to learn what it means to have a voice for business? To utilize your voice to create the influence, impact, and income you desire. Join me, Katherine Beck, voice actor and voice coach, as I show you how to show up and stand out as the voice of your business. Learn my best tips on how to uncover your true voice, to speak with authority, and establish a personal connection to your audience that will leave them wanting to hear more. This is the Voice for Business podcast. We will get started with today's episode in just a moment, but first I want to give a big shout out to Jessica Osborne, who sent me this 5-star review and says, I've never realized how much difference learning to use your voice has on the level of impact we create with our audience. It's not just about the words, it's how they're delivered that does it. Katherine shares so much value, and I love her natural style of delivery. Oh my goodness, thank you so much, Jessica. I am so pleased to hear that you can hear the value in this podcast. And yes, you are so right. It is not just about the words, it's how you deliver those words is what matters. And most of us don't take the time to notice that or understand how much the delivery of our words truly impacts our audience. So that's what this podcast is all about. That's why it's here, to teach you and to inspire you to impact your audience through that personal connection you can make with another human being, and that's through your voice. So thank you so much for the review. And if you've been listening to the podcast and loving what you hear, do me a favor, click the subscribe button if you have not yet done so. Tap those 5 stars, leave a review, and let me know what you think of this podcast. And if you do, I'm going to be sending you a special Voice for Business podcast gift in the mail. So if you're loving this podcast and this episode, go ahead, leave us a review, and you'll get something special in the mail from me. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share some big news with you. I am hosting a free masterclass on the very topic that Jessica just mentioned in her review. It's not what you say, but how you say it. Now, you will definitely want to register for this because I am also going to be taking some volunteers to work with me through the exercises we are going to explore in the masterclass. I will be running 2 workshops that's going to be held. The first one on Tuesday, December 7th. That's 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for those of you that are here in Sydney with me, that will actually be on Wednesday morning at 9:30 a.m. The second one will be on Wednesday, 8th of December, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And again, if you're here in Sydney with me, it will be the following day, which will be Thursday at 11 a.m. So make sure to check out all the details and register. Remember, it's free. Head over to katherinebeck.com/masterclass to register. And I look forward to potentially working with you as well on one of those days. All right, let's get to this podcast episode. 3 easy ways to enhance your voice to create more impact with your audience. Now, speaking of the number 3, that reminds me of voiceovers. Part of our voiceover training, and something, sometimes that's called on for us voiceover artists or voice actors, whatever you may like to call yourself, is the old 3 in a row. So voiceover actors in commercial voiceovers and training, and then on the job, on the spot, when you get a script, there's something called 3 in a row. And it's a really great skill for all of us to know how to do with our voice, because I'm sure you are going to be promoting yourself or something in some sort of manner at some point. So, for example, it could be a tagline for a product, or it could be a call to action to get people to listen or take the next step, whatever it might be. 3 in a row is a really great way to shake things up, loosen them up, and get 3 different deliveries. So it's one sentence that you can play around with delivering in 3 different ways. And each way has a different intention, which can shift the intonation or the melody of the words as well. And that will start to pique the interest of your listener. So let me give you an example so that this makes sense. And you can try this week and see how you go with the exercise. All right, so let's use a familiar tagline for a product like M&Ms. So the tagline for M&Ms, which you may have heard at some stage, is melts in your mouth, not in your hands. So let's think of 3 different attitudes or feelings we could use to deliver this tagline in 3 different ways. Let's say the first way is pleasure and enjoyment of the chocolate. Like, this is the smoothest and best chocolate I have ever tasted. So if I have that sort of feeling and intention inside my head, it might sound like this. M&Ms, melts in your mouth, not in your hands. Okay. All right. Next, let's try excitement. And I want the person I'm talking to try the M&Ms because I know they're just going to love them as much as I do. And so I want to share my excitement and my enthusiasm to the other person in my delivery. So that might sound like this. M&Ms. Melts in your mouth, not in your hands. Okay. All right. And let's try one more. Maybe this time it's like, I got the solution. Let's say the person you're speaking to is so tired of chocolate that always melts in their hands. And now you have the perfect chocolate for them to try. So that might sound like this. M&Ms, melts in your mouth, not in your hands. So there you go. There's 3 different intentions, 3 different ways of delivering the same words. And you can hear how the same sentence can have 3 different meanings and affect the audience, the listener, in 3 different ways. And you may have also heard what I like to do sometimes when I'm doing 3 in a rows or doing voiceovers is I like to do a little bit of a lead in or ad-libbing to get me into the line, the feeling, the intention. So you may have heard me do or, oh, I've got it, or something like that. I find that really helpful. That doesn't mean that you'll actually add that in your recording, but it helps you get into the mood. So that's something else you can play around with. Anyway, this is a really great exercise to do if you need to just shake up the energy in your delivery, or if you need to just shake out those nerves when you're preparing right before you speak. This 3 in a row exercise can be really helpful. So try that on for size this week. And if you do, make sure and let me know how you go. All right, so that's just a fun way to get into today's topic, which is 3 easy ways to enhance your voice to create more impact with your audience. And obviously, that exercise I just shared with you really is a great way to create impact. But let's talk more specifically about voice technique. And the first thing I want to talk about is your vocal range. What is range? I think of it kind of like where you place your voice. So if you think of like musical notes on an instrument, some notes are high and some notes are low. There's a range there. And we also have a range within our voice as well. And a great way to get in touch with your vocal range is to listen to your voice. Record yourself and notice, where does your voice tend to reside? Is it deep and low? So if I try and go deep and low, it might sound like this. Or is it really high in your head? So if I go really high up here, it could be all the way up here. Or is it somewhere sort of in between? Or maybe it's stuck on one note. So there's not a lot of variety. You're just kind of sitting on one note most of the time. Gets into that sort of monotone pattern, right? So the reason why range is so important is because it really does impact our listener. So you can hear when I spoke in a monotone voice, how that might become boring after a while, or maybe your listener starts to drift off or stop listening to what you're saying. You could be saying the most profound things, but for me as a listener, I may not receive it because I get tuned out. If it's all on the same note, we get kind of bored. So if you want to sound perhaps more authoritative, sound like an expert in your field, then having some of those lower notes or some variety in your range can be really powerful for sounding authoritative. But again, we don't want to stay low the whole way through. We still want to explore other notes in our mid-range and high range as well. And those higher notes help balance those lower notes really nicely and help the listener connect to us on a more emotional and personal level as well. So you can think lower notes give you that sense of authority or being an expert, and the higher notes may connect on a more emotional or personal level. So we really want to have a variety there, a variety of those notes to sustain impact with your audience. So that's the first thing I would recommend, is exploring your range to create that impact with your audience. But that's not enough. My second tip for you is your rhythm. And when I talk about rhythm, we're talking about the pace at which you speak and the ability to pause. Now, with our pace, our rhythm, we want to, I think of it as taking our audience on a vocal journey. And when we do that, we don't keep the pace the same way throughout. Again, that can be boring for your audience. We can start to lose interest and start to drift off if everything is the same pace. Or if everything's really fast, we can't keep up with you. And again, we tune out. Or if everything's really slow, again, that can be really boring for us as the listener. So we need some variety in our pacing. So when you're thinking about your pace, your rhythm, the important thing is to stop thinking about yourself and start thinking about the listener. Because if you were considering your listener, then you would speak slower if you're a fast talker. And that's so that they can follow along with you. And when you slow down your pace, it allows for maximum impact because they have time to register your words. They have time to think about what you're saying. And then when you add in a pause, well, the pause gives the listener a chance to absorb the information, and it gives you the opportunity to let an important thought really land and sit with your audience. But beware that you don't speak so slow or pause too much or too long, because that as well will start to lose the interest of your audience. So make that pacing intentional, make those pauses intentional so you can keep that impact going with your audience. So balance, finding balance is the key. And that leads me to tip number 3, which is all about clarity. And what I mean about clarity is your diction or your articulation, making sure the words you say are easy to understand by your audience. And this really is key if you are reaching a global audience. Because maybe your best friend and your next door neighbor can understand you, but can someone halfway around the world understand you as well? And so you want to start thinking about your vowel sounds and your consonants. The vowel sounds should be the top priority when you speak because that's really what's going to help create impact and that close connection to your audience. But the consonants should also be clear and concise as well. So tongue twisters are a great way to warm up your sounds, your vowels, and your consonants. And I'm going to share with you one of my favorite tongue twisters to do, and you can use this as part of your daily warm-up. I'll also add it into the show notes as well so you can see the actual words on the page in case you're confused in the recording, because a couple of these words aren't words you probably usually use in your daily vocabulary, but it goes something like this. The sea ceaseth and sufficeth us. I'll say it again. The sea ceaseth and sufficeth us. That's really tricky. Now let's try it 3 times. But again, picking up the pace, we still want to have that clarity. So if you don't have the clarity, don't pick up the pace. The sea ceaseth and sufficeth us. The sea ceaseth and sufficeth us. The sea ceaseth and sufficeth us. Feeling warmed up? I bet you are. So there you have it. Those are my 3 easy ways to enhance your voice to create more impact with your audience. And remember, if you'd like to learn more about my voice process and how to speak up, show up, and stand out as the voice of your business, then join me for my free masterclass. It's coming up real soon, so make sure you register at katherinebeck.com/masterclass, and I will see you there at the free training. And remember, if you love this episode, go ahead and let me know. Take a screenshot of the show, share it with me on Instagram stories, and tag me in it at Katherine_Beck_. You can find me there. And if you've got any questions or topics you'd like to hear me talk about on the podcast, just let me know. And coming up next week on the show, I am going to be talking more about it's not what you say, it's how you say it. Now, make sure to share the show with all your friends, let them know it's coming up next week, and invite them to tune in with you and learn how to show up, speak up, and stand out as the voice of your business. Until then, go on, get out there and use that powerful voice of yours. And I'll see you back here next time.